All right. All right. We are back from the holiday, Thanksgiving holiday, at least, weekend. Um, HEF podcast here with Brenda Dickinson, Crystal Crawford, and myself, Jason Crawford. Before we jump in, we're going to do what we normally do and thank our top sponsors. FPEA, listed among them, is the only one yet. We are still going. I think, yeah, the holidays. I keep saying this, but I think the holidays slowed down even that process. But we have one more or a couple more yet to come, and just slowly making their way. We'd like to see them pull the trigger very, very soon. But there's many, many, many things in the backgrounds in the works. Um, so much that it's difficult to tell you what any of them are, and we never know which of them are going to fall into the come out of the fire. The irons are going to come out of the fire and go hot and ready to be worked. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for all of that. Good day. Good day, everyone. Brenda, I think, is in and out with us visually. She's on her cell phone at her son's place, I believe. And so she's kind of in and out. You may see her pop in and out, and that's all right. Uh, Bear with us. She apparently you haven't had hardly any sleep. What have you got going on over there?
Oh, I always have humongous projects all the time, but
Yeah.
mainly I was helping my son, and it just went on and on and on. We were cleaning out his warehouse, so
Uh,
anyway, he's
were you
he
throwing boxes around and like packing stuff and
yeah,
lifting?
yeah, but like power tools, heavy stuff.
Oof.
So
Wow.
we pulled in a little help, but I did a lot of the organization. So
Well, good.
anyway,
That's a lot. It's a lot.
yeah,
Don't hurt yourself. Take it
didn't
easy.
plan to spend my Thanksgiving day that way, but fortunately, we did our Thanksgiving on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, so I was free to do
Oh,
what. So, yeah,
well, that's cool. That's cool. We so last podcast we left off with the technical difficulty. I think that is probably my fault. I checked my whole computer was freezing up, and I checked, and I had multiple updates that had come in for my various drivers, and they were all angry that they weren't going first because the stream was going first, and then they put it into it. So I think we got that cleared up. You have to love it when manufacturers roll out updates automatically right in the middle of that. So, anywho, hopefully that doesn't happen again. We'll move.
great.
We'll move into yeah.
Technology is great, but it's also very frustrating. So, at
Yes.
this our lives, I don't know that we could go back to the old mail system and
Not like this.
wait days for something to come.
Yeah, you could mail out a bunch of VHSs or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my word, that's funny. Excuse me. All right, so we when we left off though, we were talking. I know that a part of the conversation we had going on was we were talking about the call that we had um, with the director of PEP, and we were talking about how someone even on that call who was a part of one of the home education instructional programs had was describing themselves, and they described themselves as tutoring, co-op, school, hybrid, home education thing, and it just kind of sent my brain spiraling. Every synapse in my brain fired at once. I believe it was like one of those electrical machines, and I was like, "Whoa!" All of those words. Uh, it it's important that we use the right kind of terms, and it dawned on me kind of after that podcast that maybe we should revisit. And Brenda, you got on today and said the same thing, so I'm glad to know we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, but you mentioned visiting that conversation from a different perspective, the perspective of the parents as they're putting in for their reimbursements or they're putting in their invoices for things, how they categorized. So there's the importance of understanding what it is on the legal end, so you can describe yourself accurately, and understand what your rights are as you've chosen your education path. But then there's also the way Step Up has things put into their system, so that when you go to submit for a reimbursement, one matches one and two matches two, they pair up, and you can get those pushed through correctly. Crystal, Brenda, who wants to go first? Y'all dive in. I talk too much.
Well, I think one of the main things is, I guess I'll start first with my thoughts, is that it's all based on the law. And so you have to understand the whole scholarship program definitions. And it may not be what you think those terms mean, but it is what they have been designated in law
Mm.
as being. And so while we have the category of compulsory attendance in the six options that are there, drilling down into the PEP, which is the newest way to meet compulsory attendance, there's a lot of definitions as to how the various organizations or individuals, groups, fall into their definitions. So, although I could take this, Crystal has way more experience in this area because she's been doing it and been watching Facebook and getting information coming in on our HEF
Certainly.
website. She's been busy, but
Yes.
she has a wealth of knowledge. So take it from here, Crystal.
Okay, so a lot of what I've been seeing is just, like Brenda said, confusion between what parents think the term means and what is actually defined in statute and the definitions that Step Up and AAA are going to be using when they are processing reimbursements or determining whether something is approved. So I've seen everything from parents saying that board games and Legos should count as curriculum to people misunderstanding the differences between a standalone online class and online part-time tutoring or a virtual program, and then the difference between tutoring and a home education instructional program. So there's just a lot of confusion about the different categories.
Yeah.
One good place to start is the actual purchasing guide from Step Up. So I'm going to drop the link to it, Jason, and maybe you can.
Sure.
This is for Step Up. AAA, I'm not
Do you want me
sure.
to screen share that? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm just going to drop the link
Oh.
and you can put it in the comments or something for people to reference.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we can screen share if you want, but
Well, that's up to you.
it's a
Make
little
it
bit buried on Step Up's site now, at least on my screen. So there used to be a direct link to it on the PEP page on Step Up's website, but on my screen, I thought they had taken it away until today. I realized it's still there. It's just white, so it blends in with the background. So if you hover your mouse around, you can find the link. I don't know if that's just the way my screen is displaying it or if that's something else.
That's odd. Okay.
You can also get to it, though, through the parent handbook, which is clearly displayed on the page. There's a link to the purchasing guide inside the parent handbook, but that's like several layers deep of things you have to do.
Well, I have it opened, and I don't know if it remembered where I left off at a certain point, but I have it up where people can follow along if you want.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the purchasing guide. This is Step Ups. I honestly don't know if AAA has one. I talked to one parent who's using AAA and said they were never given a guide of any kind to define what the categories are. So I feel bad for that parent because it's very hard to know what category to put something in if you're not even given definitions of the categories. But
Let me say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay.
AAA is basically waiting for Step Up to develop the purchasing guide. And as you know, sometime in December, DOE is going to approve or establish one for everybody. So since Step Up has way more staff and the capability of developing all that, they're just kind of waiting to see what is going to be the final outcome of it. So that's a explanation.
So right now they don't have one, but after December there will be a unified one that Step Up and AAA are both using. That also means that some things in the current purchasing guide may change
Mm-hmm.
between, through that process because the DOE has to approve whatever the final guide is, and then Step Up and AAA have to agree on some things. So there may be some changes, but currently
Mm.
the guide that he has displayed is the purchasing guide for Step Up. And since the majority of people that I've encountered applied through Step Up, I just want to kind of address this.
Okay.
This guide is where you will find all the information you need for what category something goes into. Um, One important thing to note, though, that I know Brenda wanted to cover is the home education instructional program and what that is and how that's defined. So I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
can find that section in the guide and show it.
Sure. Where would I look for that
Let
particular?
me see.
Is it the? Because I think they're going to have the same.
It
Okay, here
has
it
its
is. It's
own
under
section.
tuition and fees.
Yeah,
Okay.
tuition and fees for home education instructional programs for personalized
Mm-hmm.
education program students. Like it has its own section in the guide.
Mm-hmm. I'm there now.
Okay. So the important thing to note here is that this is an actual defined category. So I've seen people throwing around terms like, well, we have a co-op, all the parents take turns. That's a home education instructional program. The terms are defined specifically
Yeah.
in statute and in this guide. So there's the criteria on this page of what
Mm-hmm.
exactly that means, but essentially it's a business organization that offers in-person classes at a physical location for
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling, home educating students.
So if your
And
co-op
there's,
is not a business.
yeah, if it's not a business or if it meets in homes or if it's entirely online, then it's not going to meet these qualifications.
Right.
The other thing is that the tuition and fees may not be payable to an individual. So
Right. Okay.
if you're in a more casual co-op situation where there's not a business organization that you're writing the checks out to and you're paying the individual instructors,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to have a hard time getting that approved because it doesn't meet these qualifications. Um, so just keep that in mind when you're asking for invoices from your program, but also make sure that the program you're attending fits these criteria. If not, then it probably is going to fall under part-time tutoring, which has different qualifications. So this is why this is important because a home education instructional program gets approved as a program. And then once it is approved, any classes taken at that program are considered part of that program. So
Mm-hmm.
the processors for reimbursement should not be asking for teaching credentials, teaching certificates, or any kind of proof if you are submitting a reimbursement for a valid qualified home education instructional program.
So it's very important, from what I'm hearing you say, to make sure that when you're submitting, it matches up. And I think that to a lot of people that might just seem like common sense, but I think it's not as common sense whenever we use the words or we use the language to refer to a number of things inconsistently, right? So it's easy to get confused. Like you said, oh, well, we're home educators and it's an instructional program, so that's a home education instructional program, right? Uh, it's got to meet all the criteria, right? And so then if you put what actually is tutoring in as home education instructional program, or if you put home educational instructional program in as tutoring, you have a higher chance of those getting kicked back or
Yeah.
shot down.
And what we're
Hmm.
seeing quite a bit of is people submitting either as tutoring and then being required to submit all kinds of teaching certifications for every instructor
Right.
at the program, or they put it in as a home education instructional program when they submit the reimbursements, but the processor doesn't understand what that means. And they're asking for
Hmm.
all these additional things. So I want the parents to know that if you submit as a home education instructional program and you really are attending a qualified home education instructional program and they ask
Hmm.
for teaching credentials, teaching certificates, you don't need to supply those. That is not what the processor is in error in that situation. But you need to make sure that whatever program you're attending really does meet those qualifications when you're
Hmm.
submitting. Otherwise, it probably would fall under part-time tutoring, and then each tutor would have to have a certification in the subject they're tutoring or a bachelor's degree in the subject they're tutoring. There's a whole list of criteria if it's a tutor situation.
Got you.
and they
No, we go ahead.
submit
Sorry.
to be a tutor, proving those credentials on the step up um, approval list. If they don't, uh, if they don't become a provider on that, and they have a whole list of things that they have to qualify as in order to be able to give you an invoice that then will quickly go through the process.
Yeah, so this is something else that I've discussed with a few parents recently, was the question about, does my home education instructional program that I'm attending have to become an approved provider? Because some programs are telling the parents we don't want to be on their list, we don't want to go through that process. So, really quick, I'm going to explain the difference between just becoming approved for the reimbursement list and becoming direct
Can I
purchase
ask?
in the provider
Sorry, there's a question that came in
Yeah.
that's in regards to that. So why don't I read that question
Okay.
before we dive into that too? Alyssa says, "Is it a requirement for home education programs to be an approved provider? Our program meets all of the requirements listed on the purchasing guide. Plus, I've provided all documentation, proof of payment, program descriptions, etc., but it was placed on hold because they were not on the list of approved providers."
Okay, yeah. So
The
that's exactly what I was going to address. Is there more
the
to the question?
purchasing guide does not require this, though, and it seems rules and requirements are being added along the way after we chose our program based off of what Step Up for Students provided before the school year. So
Okay. So
definitely address that.
let me address that.
Cool.
You do not have to be on the approved list in order for the reimbursement to be approved. However, if a parent submits a reimbursement request for a home education instructional program that has not gone through the process of getting approved as a provider and added to the list, then they have to manually research that program. Like, there is an other box where the parent can type it in, but the processor has to then do the work of looking up the program online, going to the website, verifying that it meets all the requirements. They might ask the parent for extra documentation to verify from their end, and it's going to take much, much longer. And then also keep in mind that not every reimbursement request for that program is going to go to the same processor. So every single parent that submits a reimbursement request for your program is going to also get put on hold for it to be manually checked and for them to do the research and for them to verify that it meets all the criteria. So you're correct that it's not a requirement in the purchasing guide. And on our call recently with the PEP director and Step Up, he even said, yeah, like, there is an other box you can type it in. But what they're working toward, what they're trying to do, is get as many home education instructional programs on the pre-approved list as possible so that there is no more manual check. Like, it will be on the list. The parent can select it. All the processor has to do is look at it and go, oh, yeah, that one's on the list. And it's done. Because they are pre-vetted and the program has already gone from the provider side through the process of all those checks and vetting everything. This is why I was saying I want to explain the difference between being on the approved reimbursement list and being a direct pay provider, which is what they're now just calling provider marketplace. You can go through the process to get approved as a provider, and just basically it just puts you on the drop down list for parents to select for reimbursements. You can opt out of entering services into your account as a provider, and if you don't enter services, then there's no services for them to put in their shop for the provider marketplace, and so you're not a direct purchase provider, you're just on the approved reimbursement list. That's what they were explaining to us.
And that's what the HEIPs will do.
Yes. If you want to be direct purchase as a home education instructional program, then there's a whole sort of category of new questions to consider, which is like, how do I input my services to where I can get paid in a timely manner? Because that's all the stuff we were talking about before, where their system is set up to pay the providers as the service completes, but a lot of home education instructional programs charge the parents upfront for the year. So then if you're charging yearly, you actually wouldn't get paid by Step Up until the end of the year. So Step Up was suggesting maybe in their system, you set it up differently as a monthly fee a quarterly fee or something where you can get paid in a more reasonable time frame from the parents who are purchasing direct from Step Up. But that's a whole
Mhm.
other thing. If all you want is to be on the approved list for reimbursements, you still go through the same process to set up your provider account, submit all your stuff to get approved. And then what the director of PEP was telling us is if you just don't input services, and then that way they're not putting you in the marketplace for their system because there's no services to put in the marketplace. So it is to your advantage as a home education instructional program to get on that approved list, just because it's going to make the parents in your program's reimbursements process more quickly. It's going to make the process a lot easier for everybody. And
So she
on
did also comment that the purchasing guide does not require this, and it seems like rules and requirements are being added along the way. This isn't necessarily rules and requirements being added
not a
along the
requirement.
way. The home education instructional programs had the same definitions and same rules to begin with, but their system, they're trying to create ways to automate.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they're creating processes. And
Yeah,
so
so they're
to
not
make
adding
that
a
go
rule.
faster.
Yeah, they're not adding a rule that you have to be on their approved
Right.
list. But what they are trying to do is streamline their reimbursement process. And
Mhm.
so if you get on the approved list, it makes everything easier and quicker to process.
When you say you mean the
I mean the home
Parents.
education instructional program.
Or the,
right.
sorry, okay.
And so parents can pay out of pocket, and that's the process that they would go through. If it's on the direct pay, then they, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the provider agrees to accept money from the scholarship funding organization so it doesn't come out of pocket for parents.
Right.
Yes, that's the difference.
So they
So
would go into the system, pick from the drop down what those services are.
yeah. So if you
But
do enter services and they put you in the provider marketplace, then the parent can literally just go into Emma, find you on the provider list, select the services they want. So let's say you offer biology class and
Mhm.
you've set in your fees quarterly, you offer algebra. They could select quarter 1 algebra, quarter 1 biology, put them in their cart, check out, and the money comes directly from their scholarship. It doesn't have to come out of their pocket. Now on your provider end, all you have to do is log in, see that someone has submitted a request for services. You look at it and go, oh, yeah, I know that parent, or yeah, they registered with our program, or
Sure.
whatever.
And that's
And
from the
then,
perspective of the home education instructional
yeah,
program.
it is the parent's job, if they purchase directly through Step Up like that, it's their job to then contact you as the home education instructional program and say, hey, I paid for this class on Step Up. Can you get my kid all set up? What else do I need to do? And then
Mhm.
you, as the provider, would be able to look in your system and go, oh, yeah, I see here. Yeah, there's the service. And you can just click approve. And
Mhm.
from the home education instructional program leaders that have already been through that process, they have said it is literally that simple.
Fast.
Like
Yeah,
you
and it's
just go in,
fast.
you look, it's there, you click to approve it. And then a few
It's
days
paid.
later, the money shows up in
Yeah.
your account, theoretically. He said it could be like by the next Friday.
Mhm.
And so what they're trying to do, they're not trying to add additional requirements. They're just trying to streamline the process on the technical side so that it doesn't take as much hands-on manpower, and people don't have to wait as long for everything to be manually researched and manually approved. Hopefully that
Let
makes
me,
sense.
yeah, I think it's very clear. The what the we haven't talked about in this discussion is that back when we were doing beginning the FESUA program, we were able to just tell Step Up and they got approval from DOE, but DOE did the research and said, okay, this program is approved. It meets all the, nefarious. We didn't have anything approved, but basically they could see on the website it really was legitimate. Um, that was in their old legacy system. And I think FESUA is still operating in the legacy system. So it's not going to be as difficult because those providers in there were approved. Now, changing over to Emma, everybody has to go through the process again and get on the provider list. So,
So this
um,
maybe
changing this
feedback.
from one system to another system has made this even more complicated.
Yeah, this may be good feedback for the director. So, because she says, this is exactly what mine is. It's an LLC located at a church, payable to the business, provides an invoice, yet they're denying it because it is not quote unquote on the list. She says that's what they're saying to me. It's denied because it's not on the list. So I would, she says, our program is working on becoming a provider, but I'm not 5 to 6 months without reimbursement for 6 kids. I don't know what that exactly means.
So
Let,
they
let me say something real quick right
Yeah.
there. Those providers that are having difficulty because they're not on the list may need to join our call with
Yeah,
Step Up.
I was
yeah,
going to
we
say
have
that, and I
another
was going
one.
to say go to the forum where we have the following this subject line. This
Yeah.
is something that needs to be addressed there. You can type this in there and get direct eyes on it as well. But yeah, if it may also behoove you to join the call that we're
Yeah.
on as
So
well.
we have another call this Wednesday, the 29th, with
Yeah.
the head of PEP, and these calls have been specifically about home education instructional programs and
Mm-hmm.
making sure everything is set up in
Oh, now.
Step Up system. So if you are the leader of the program, I'm not a parent just attending the program, but the leader of the
Mhm.
program, and you want to join the call to ask questions about
Just
what you
email
need to
us.
do to make sure that the parents using your program are approved, just message us, email us, or Facebook message us, and
Email us because I have to add you, and I'll need your
yeah,
email address to add you to the
we can
call and all
add
that.
you.
So,
It's an invitation only call, so we'll have to send you the invitation
mhm.
to it.
And it's only for home education instructional programs.
Yes, for the leaders of home education instructional programs.
Yeah.
But that's what we've been discussing with him, are little things like that, because the
Mm-hmm.
processor should not be denying it just because it's not on the list. That's
Right.
probably
So
a processor. I know that they tripled their processing staff recently. He
mhm.
told us that. That's probably a partially trained processor
It's
who
possible, yeah.
who doesn't understand, because we were told that you can type in other and then they just have to manually approve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if she's typing in other, or if they're typing in other when they submit the reimbursements, and they're saying, oh, it's denied because it's not on the list, that contradicts what we've been told
Yeah.
about how it will be processed. So that is definitely something that you would put in the forum, email us. That way, they watch that forum. We gave them a direct link to that forum post.
So we do have, there is a post in the
Mhm.
forum, a specific post for like issues and problems that you'd like to see fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find that post and add it there,
Put it there.
that's a good place too, because that link is one that the director of PEP is going to have access to see what people
Yeah.
are posting.
And email us directly, and we'll also add you to the call. So some of those things like that we sit and sort those out. So it's like a little workshop call.
If you're not able to attend the call, just let us know, and we can just make sure that we ask him about that
Right.
situation.
Again, that would be why having it on the forum is important. Because if you can't make that call, then we can take your information and advocate for you. So we did have other questions in the comments. Do you want to get to them?
Yeah.
All right. Shara says, 2 quick unrelated questions. I had a zoo membership not approved for the full amount. Step Up Chat said maybe it's related to the $2.99 theme park admission. Should those two things be related? This would definitely matter when considering adding other museum memberships or field trips.
I am gonna look. I think I have. Let me pull the purchasing guide up.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see
And
if they're in the same category in the purchasing guide or not.
okay, there's another question too. So I'll ask that one while you're looking that one up. It says, with UA children registered with the county, if I do a MAP test at home, that wouldn't count for the testing requirement? Question mark. Or does it have to be administered at a facility with a teacher?
The tests have to be administered according to the manufacturer's instructions. So if the manufacturer of the test allows for home proctoring, then it can be proctored out.
It'd be a MAP test and be for UA.
Yeah, MAP, I've heard, I've seen, I haven't looked myself, is in the Scholar Shop that you can purchase yourself. So I'm assuming I haven't looked at it to see what the manufacturer says, but if the manufacturer instructions allow for home proctoring, then it can be proctored at home. It qualifies, Step Up will allow for it to be proctored at home.
Okay.
And you might talk about this too. We're not trying to promote one test over the other because we want you to choose what's best for your child. We don't make your decisions, but we have had the benefit of investigating and having a whole discussion on our Monday calls with a program I had not been familiar with for testing and assessment, and it's called STAR. Do you want to give some
Yeah, so it's
comments on?
sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, it's the STAR assessment, and it does math and reading, and it goes from pre-readers, kindergarten level, all the way up through 12th grade. It is approved, and the provider we had on is Northridge Academy,
Hmm.
and they have all the licensing to offer the test to parents, and they can set up your account for you, and then all you have to do is have your student log in and take it. You can take it as many times as you want. They give you like a license for the school year, and that way your kid can even practice it. um, and then when
Hmm.
you go to take the year-end test result, you just submit that year-end result.
Yeah.
So that is an option, and it seemed very easy to administer, very kid-friendly, very low
Hmm.
stress,
And the fact that you can take it.
able to be used even from kids that aren't reading yet. You can
Mhm.
use it as a parent for your own reference if you just want to see what areas you might need to focus more on and how your
Mhm.
kids are performing. Um,
Yeah,
so that
it
is
seemed like a great option.
yeah, and they are working to get. I don't know if they already are, but I know that they
I
were
think
working to
Shara was
get.
actually on. She's the one who asked, but I think she was actually on that live stream that we did
I was
whenever they
just gonna
were.
say, I know that they were working
Hmm.
to become, a provider in the marketplace where you could purchase it directly. I don't know if that
Hmm.
process is completed yet, but they're working for that. But as for the map, if the answer to that is if it says in the instructions it can be administered at home, then it can be administered at home. You don't have to do it at a facility unless the test itself requires that it be administered by some sort of official proctor at a facility.
Hmm. All right. So the first question then, the zoo membership question.
Yes. So
Do you want me to
I looked at
restate it, or are you good?
I'm good. I looked at the
Okay.
purchasing guide. They are in the same category, but they're sort of like two qualifications. So the categorical spending cap for the category is $500. It's the field trip category. Theme parks are a sub, like on the bullet list under that, with the special note that they are only reimbursable up to $299 per year. So I don't think that they would have denied zoo or museum admission because it was over $299 when the cap for that is $500 for the year. But I don't know in your situation, I don't know if you tried to purchase a family pass because I have been told that they will only reimburse the individual student cost. So if you're trying to purchase a family pass to save money, that's fine, but just keep in mind that they're only going to reimburse each student for the amount that it would have cost an individual student pass.
Mm,
That might be why, but I don't know, what exactly she submitted.
okay. Shara says that's what I was wondering. Do I just turn in the test result to the county and not have to hire an evaluator?
Um, that's a lot of questions all mixed together. The test results will go to Step Up, not the county, if you're PEP.
This was the UA.
Oh,
We have
UA.
UA.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Then you'll turn it into the county. But that might be different requirements if it's UA.
Wait. Yeah, the UA does not require a test or assessment. You can still have the five options that are in law for a home education program evaluation. Um, so for the county, that's all that is required. Um, I'm not really sure if you have to turn that test score into step up. I don't think you do for the UA.
Not for UA, I wouldn't think. Because
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that because
it's a
she mentioned
requirement for
UA.
PEP,
Mm-hmm.
but for UA,
Right.
you're still home educating with the county. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you would need to. And just to add on to what Brenda said, for UA, because you are still home educating with the county and you still have all your options, even if you use the map, if you don't want to send the full test results to the county, you can have an evaluator look at your results and then just sign that one-page evaluation form. That there's a certain wording on it, that on the one that my evaluator usually sent in, but you don't necessarily have to even send your full test results to the county if you're home educating. So you have options.
Is that wording that the child has made educational progress commensurate with his or her ability?
Yes.
That would be really important for the FESUA, because every child that is on the UA has different
Right.
progress.
Benchmarks.
Commensurate with their ability. So they have
Right.
different
Right.
Right.
Not
ability.
commensurate with a certain grade level or a certain, like, commensurate
Right,
with
right.
their ability.
Right.
Because all you have to show is that they made progress.
So Alyssa comes back and she says, exactly. It just seems like nobody can fix it. This is in regards to the previous thing. Thank you. I'll try the forum. Would love the link. The link is actually in the pinned comment. That it should be the first comment. It's pinned. I have it pinned.
Post.
Yeah, to the forum. So it should be pinned up there. Someone says, being paid. She said, Barbara says that many providers are not being paid, and a lot are not showing up in EMA. FESUA, new families are in EMA. FSUA, wow, Step Up for Students doesn't have a viable process to add providers that isn't manual in nature. We have had to engage legislators to get businesses added and paid. Processing staff is very often not provided purchasing guide or rules, and that has been confirmed by COO. I'm brain fogging on what that is, and it's caused many transactions to be denied.
Operating officer.
Oh, okay.
Chief
Got you.
of Step.
So I don't know if she's saying for in the legacy system that this has been an issue, or if she's talking about Emma. But I'll just reiterate that right now what they're working with Emma, because it is a new platform, they are working to automate as much of the process as possible. So right now things are taking time, but they actually do have a system for approval for providers to get into their marketplace if you want to be direct pay, to get on the approved list if you want to be. They'll have you actually set up a provider Emma account so that you can see everything from your end. There's a mechanism in place to get approved. So that part of the process is not in question. Just the amount of time that it might take to actually process and approve it is uncertain, because they're still working on tech issues, trying to get things streamlined and set up on their end.
And let me mention that I don't know what the numbers are now, but in one of our previous Monday calls, we were told prior to that call, and I think it's only been like less than a month, they were processing over 90,000 requests, and that is all of the FESU EO, the educational opportunities, and the FCEOs, where some of those are, I'm going to use all these terms in education, ESAs, educational savings accounts. So it's time consuming. And then, like Crystal said, they brought on, what did you say? Did you give a number of?
No, they said they just said they tripled the processing staff. They
okay.
didn't say
They did. Yeah.
And then they have to be educated. So in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, if you've got an EO account where you just send money to a school, and they don't have as many options because they don't have the home education instructional programs, the child has to go to a private school. It could be that they're processing those faster because they are less complicated. So when you throw in the educational saving account where the parent chooses all these options, it's going to take more time to process than just sending money to a private school. And some of the brick and mortar private schools are almost being put out of business for the same reason that the home education instructional programs are meeting those delays in getting into the system. And I've read in the newspapers, some of them are having to borrow money to keep the school going, especially if it's a small school, because they're not getting reimbursed from the program.
Hmm.
And they didn't ask the parents to pay because they thought they would be paid in September. But it's an overall complicated process that the legislature created, and then basically they passed it on to the scholarship funding organizations. And on paper, it looks real simple. But the problem is setting up those systems, getting these definitions in the purchasing guide, which took several months to come up with all those definitions and processes. And then the part that Jason can speak to is the complication of the program
Hmm.
uh, developers to figure out which categories and how you go about the processes. And so the technical issues are a huge part of the reason that these are being delayed.
Yeah. Yeah. Then human resources. Everything is being updated simultaneously while it's being informed, and then trying to execute and deliver outward. So it's a bit of a mess. Um, I
Well,
don't
and this
wish
is
that on anybody.
this is why also that we wanted to reiterate the importance of understanding the definitions of the terms, because the terms as they're defined in statute and in the purchasing guide are what Step Up is going by, what AAA is going to go by, what the processors, when they're fully trained, will be going by. So the parents and the home education instructional program providers, and if you're a part-time tutor who's a provider, we all need to understand how those terms are defined and how to categorize things when we're submitting them, so that we don't get things kicked back asking for stuff they shouldn't be asking for.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to help once all the system gets nailed down, where things are set up in the system correctly and the processors are trained, then parents are still going to need to understand what category something falls under and how to submit it,
Hmm.
to avoid getting asked for a bunch of additional things that they shouldn't have to provide, or to
Yeah.
avoid
So
getting it rejected.
Shara says that's what I was wondering. Can I just turn in the test? This is for UA to the county and not have to hire an evaluator. I think Shara's situation. She said she wants to do Star next year, but it's not. Michael asked, "Is Star in the Scholar Shop?" I don't think it's there yet,
No,
They're
I'm
working.
but they
at
are
the
working on it.
dollar shop.
If it's not there yet, they're working on it. I haven't
Yeah.
checked yet to see if it is.
I'll
But they're
follow
working
them.
on getting it as a vendor and getting it put in there.
Yeah.
To answer your question, yes. So a standardized test is one of the options for if you're home educating with the county. It's one of your end of the year evaluation options. So you don't have to hire a separate evaluator. You can
Hmm.
just submit that test result to the county. Some parents don't
Um,
want to submit the actual test results to the county, and so
and
they
then
go a different way.
Barbara
Oh,
says, or you can register with an umbrella school and avoid both by fulfilling the umbrella school's requirements.
Hold on, I
mm,
think Brenda had something to say about the test, and then we'll get to the umbrella because that's a
Okay.
different.
that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in my opinion, again, because the requirement is to make educational progress commensurate with their ability. If you've got a child that has um, learning issues, they may have a good day on one test day and a bad one the next year, and they may
Right.
not look like they're making educational progress.
Yeah.
And I would say be careful about doing that. Yes, you can, but you can also pay for the evaluator out of your scholarship. So I personally never recommend um, home education parents submit test scores. I I think that it's a cheaper way to do it, but in the long run, it may not be to your child's advantage. It's my
But
Yeah.
opinion.
what we
So
did,
Claudia did ask real quick, are homeschool evaluations covered? They denied the reimbursement for both of my daughters and said it was not an eligible expense for PEP, I believe.
No, well, not PEP for UA.
Mhm.
They would have to
Yeah,
qualify.
Claudia, could you clarify whether that was UA or PEP that you're talking about? Sorry, go ahead, Brenda.
Well, I'll have to go back and look, but can't you choose the category for assessments using a choice navigator and it be covered?
under PEP, yes, but I haven't looked at
Yeah.
UA and how that's set up. I don't know if the UA scholarship covers end of year evaluations for home educating students with the county or not. I haven't looked.
Claudia
We,
said she's referring to PEP.
she's referring to PEP.
Yes.
Okay, so for PEP, you would not be trying to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. So end of year assessment for PEP has to be a standardized test. We as a PEP student, you don't get the other options. So they wouldn't cover a homeschool evaluation because you wouldn't need one, but they will cover the end of the year assessment fees. That's in the purchasing guide for what they will cover: a standardized testing fee, or a choice navigator to administer the test, or a choice navigator to help you just make your decisions for what you want to do for the year. So in essence, that's like an evaluator. But it's for PEP, it's called a choice navigator, and they have certain qualifications that they have to be approved in step up system for. So it's essentially the same qualifications that a tutor would need to meet, but those are the qualifications. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's what I've got. We should address the umbrella school thing because so the the summary answer is that an umbrella school is a private school. So you technically can't be a home educating student in statute and be enrolled in an umbrella school. Um, that's the
Because
summary answer.
there is no such thing in statute as umbrella schools. It's a private school. Meets all qualifications in statutes for a private school.
Yeah. So if you are enrolling in an umbrella school as your way of, I think the comment said, you know, meet all the qualifications and then you don't have to worry about it. What you're actually doing legally is enrolling as a private school student. And from that point on, it's your private school's job to ensure that they are meeting all the qualifications that they need to meet in terms of tracking your attendance and requirements and any inspections that the state or county may require and all of that stuff.
And let me
Mm.
say there's a process. It's in statute 1002.421 that lists out
I love it
the
when you do that.
list out the qualifications, and they have to go through that process to get approval, just like some of the programs are getting approval through step up. This is legal um, qualifications that they have to prove with DOE in order for them to qualify as a private school accepting scholarships. And I know that some of the actual private schools, some of the Jewish schools have decided to come on board and accept these scholarships for kids. And some of them are having a hard time getting approval. It's not, I mean, again, that's a process, and you may not be able to get the fire marshal out to do your fire inspection at the correct time for getting approval for that school year and going through that whole process they have to do. So, unfortunately, we can't just hand parents money and say spend it as you like, because in the beginning days of these scholarship programs, there was significant fraud, and we're trying our dead level best to keep any um, opportunity for parents or private schools or scholar or home education instructional programs to do something that would be unethical, taking money that they're not approved to do, thus
Leave people in
causing
space.
more regulation
Hmm.
or putting a really bad spotlight on the program. And
Hmm.
fraud is, something that we really hard to keep out of these programs so that it makes it uh, a good program for.
I mean, there are people. I was just listening to one. I was talking about that last week. There are people who just want to shut home education down. Period. They're looking for any excuse. So you're absolutely right.
Just
I think this is a good reason why I want to emphasize in the Facebook groups, these private Facebook groups, that a lot of them are like, oh, you're not allowed to post outside of this or take content from in here and post it outside. Sometimes you'll get good info, and sometimes you're just going to get, it's not intentional, malicious, misleading. But each of these scenarios that's been asked has to have care in answering them, because like Shara's, she had PEP and then switched to UA, right? So there's a timeline of different reasons why something may or may not be working when she submits, or what she needs to do next, or how that's categorized now, or what status she's currently in. There's a lot of nuance that needs to be understood when applying answers or just applying feedback, rather than just, you know, the blanket response is like, oh, you could do that this way or this way. So I think it, and it's not, like I said, I don't think it's malicious, but it's very easy to get down a path of answer and have missed a very important detail, right? That impacts. Oh well, if you'd have told me that to begin with, I would have said X, right? And that's very, very, very important to consider, especially when things online, conversations escalate quickly. People jump to conclusions, or we skip steps, or we make assumptions about, like, even the question Claudia asked. We were starting to answer it, and I was like, well, I don't know if it's UA or PEP. Let's find that out first. But
yeah,
a lot of
and that
times
does
when
make
you're,
a difference.
it makes a huge difference. And a lot of times when you're online in these groups, these clarifying questions aren't always asked and waited for the response before giving answers. People just start chiming in with answers, and then it can get all over the place. If you're really wanting answers to things, the forum, our forum, is a great place to go, and invite all of those people to the forum as well. I'm not trying to steal all the people on Facebook groups. You can be in both. By all means, you can be in both. There's nothing going to stop you.
You
Crystal's in a
might see me
million of them.
popping up commenting
Yeah,
in some of them.
there's nothing to
The ones
stop
that
you.
let me
But
come.
we want to, oh, in that space, we'll be very careful, painstakingly careful, about answering them with as much accuracy as possible and as specific to you as possible. So just be that as it may, like be aware of that, and try not to get too whisked away, with the how quickly conversations can escalate, or information that's not exactly accurate can become wildfire. So just be careful of that. Crystal, you were going to say something before I.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a clarification to the umbrella school thing. So I
Cool.
don't remember if that comment was in the context of the parent who was PEP or the parent who was UA. But if you are PEP, you can't be full time enrolled in a private school, which is what an umbrella school would be, because there are 6 compulsory attendance tracks that you can choose from in statute, and PEP is its own track, and private school is a different track, and you can't be in both at the same time. You can, however, contract services with a private school. So if you wanted to pay a private school, which is what by statute an umbrella school is, to like compile your transcript for you or something like that. However, that would not be covered by PEP funds, most likely, because in order to be a scholarship school, they have to go through the whole process Brenda was explaining. And so there's a lot of nuances to if you're PEP and you want to use an umbrella school, you can't be actually enrolled in it. You can use them for services, but they probably won't be covered by PEP because most umbrella schools are not going to meet those stringent requirements for private schools to be scholarship schools. If you're UA, it's a different set of issues. But it is still important to understand that technically in statute, there is no such thing as a homeschooling umbrella school. It is a private school.
Yeah,
So
classic.
that's just important to understand legally how everything breaks down and how it's going to impact depending on which scholarship you're under, how it's going to impact.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I think that nuance. Go ahead.
we set up the laws, and I fought really hard back in the beginning, really hard, because the way that the initial rollout was that they would make all private schools go through this process. And I said, no, 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 you're not going to do that, because not all private schools want to be scholarship recipients from parents. And you're taking away the right of those of those private schools that don't want to be qualified and don't want to take any government money. And I mean, it was a huge fight, just like in getting the PEP separated from home education programs. Um, but that's why we created a whole separate section of law that is not the same as what private schools operate under in statute, which is 1002.42. And then the section for the scholarship,
You're showing off.
1002.421. So it being in a separate section allows umbrella schools to continue working and being a service to parents who want to use them, but they can't take scholarship dollars.
Yeah, and also if I think the point of the comment, because the question was about submitting the evaluations to the county. If you're enrolled in an umbrella school, you don't have to submit evaluations to the county. But that's not because the umbrella school is submitting them for you. It's because you're technically no longer home educating. You're in a private school. So that's no longer a requirement.
Yeah, I think the nuance of those things is very important to understand without getting emotional about. Are you saying whole umbrella schools don't exist, or like, well, we've been doing it this way for years? Great, cool. Practically,
And
there's a practical life play out where, like, if legally it's working, you're in that space. That's how you want to do it, and you have the freedoms to do it. Do it. Just on the back end, do understand how the foundation of that is built and what the rights of doing that are built on, so that if any of it changes, you understand how you have to change with it. It's not something to get upset about, I think. Tracy had.
hold on real quick on
Oh,
that.
okay, go
That's
ahead.
what I wanted to say is we're not saying not to do umbrella schools. We're not
Right,
saying umbrella schools are bad.
certainly.
But there is confusion about what an umbrella school actually is legally. And so we just want people to understand what they're choosing. HEF is all about parent choice and the parent's
Hmm.
right to choose what works for their family. But we
Absolutely.
want you to understand what you're choosing so that when you
Right.
choose it, like Jason said, you also know what's going to impact you. If they change
Hmm.
private school laws and you're in umbrella school, that's going to impact you. It won't necessarily impact home education with the county or PEP, but it will
Hmm.
impact you. So
Right.
we just want parents to understand what you're choosing and what, uh, in to use Sue's word, one of the HEF members, what lane you're in. When you
Yeah.
pick
Yeah.
a lane in statute, whether you
Yeah.
pick public school and you're doing like FLVS at home, which is
Sure.
technically still public school, or whether you pick an umbrella school and technically you're private school, or whether you pick PEP. We just want you to understand what you're picking and what lane you're in so that you know
Absolutely.
what your rights are and what your requirements are and how everything impacts
Well, Tracy FPEA, bless her heart, she's been waiting 23 minutes to get her question answered, because I was following the thread to try to find the end of it as we were having that conversation that was bouncing around through comments, and hers wasn't related to that, so I had to kind of skip it. But Tracy says, "Hi all, thank you for doing this. Sorry, I just recently joined, so you may have covered it, but wondering about multiple people's accounts having funds deducted, but the card isn't getting funds transferred to it. Status says submitted, but not funded for weeks already. Also, one lady I know already has amount 7,000 plus awarded, but then wasn't funded. When she called Step Up, she was told she was on the waiting list. Please advise. Thank you again.
Okay, let me give the rundown on all of those things.
Yeah.
So when you submit a reimbursement in Emma, it automatically deducts the amount of that reimbursement from your scholarship amount the moment you submit it. So it's not approved yet. That they take it from your amount. You will immediately see your remaining scholarship funds drop by that amount, and that's to prevent you from overspending accidentally. So while a reimbursement is in the submitted state, it hasn't even been approved yet, you will see the amount of your funds drop just because you submitted it. So that might be part of what's happening. The same thing happens when you submit a My Scholar Shop purchase or from the provider marketplace. It immediately comes out of your funds, and it just like earmarks those funds, even though it's not yet fully processed or approved.
Mm-hmm.
The submission process and the whole process for reimbursements right now is backed up because of all the things we were explaining. So
There's over 100,000 reimbursed.
however,
process.
I am seeing just like dozens of people reporting in the Facebook groups that suddenly a whole bunch of theirs were approved at once. So they are catching whatever was probably that they had to, triple the processing stuff. But whatever it was that was holding up the process before seems to be, moving in the right direction. They're speeding things up. Things are getting processed more quickly. Once something is approved, and I have ones that I submitted back in September that are still sitting submitted, and then I have ones I submitted in October that were approved. And then I have some that are saying completed, but if you click on the details, some of the line items on it are still in review and other line items were approved. So there seems to not be a clear order to what they're going in the system. But once something is approved, you will get an email from StepUp saying that, well, you should get an email. Some people have just logged in and seen that they had a whole bunch approved and didn't get an email. And then there will then be a waiting period between when it's approved and when the funds actually hit the debit card. Mm-hmm. The debit card should have been mailed out when you submitted your first reimbursement. It comes in an unmarked envelope, so if you didn't receive it, you may have accidentally thrown it away. So you might have to contact U.S. Bank or StepUp and request another one. But the timeline for when funds hit the card is still very uncertain. Some people got their funds to their card within days. Other people waited weeks. But that seems to be a processing thing on the U.S. Bank side, where once it's approved and sent to U.S. Bank, then it becomes like a process on their end that they have to actually do the financial side of that. So that answers, I hope, the first section of questions.
Yeah, I think the part that you left. Go ahead.
That these calls are recorded and Jason is posting them. And so if she missed more explanation than we just gave, she can go back and listen from the beginning.
Yeah,
But those
we
haven't
did
been
go
made
over.
public, though.
No, she's
those
talking
calls.
about this call.
Oh, these calls, the podcast. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we did at the beginning of the live stream today go over some reasons why reimbursements are taking longer right now, and like some tech stuff that they're working on. So yeah, that's what I was referring to. The other part of your question about being approved and seeing your award amount but not being funded, there are 2 steps to the process. So when you apply for PEP, I'm assuming this is PEP. When you apply for PEP, you apply through the FESEO scholarship at first. And then you'll get an award letter that says, yeah, you've received this scholarship. And then there'll be a link in that email address. It says you're awarded, but technically you were awarded the private school scholarship, not PEP yet. There'll be a link in that email that says, if you want to apply this award to PEP, fill out this form. So then there's a second step, and you have to fill out the PEP form. So that award amount that you're seeing is the EO scholarship. And it isn't until your status in their system actually changes to FTC PEP that you've officially been awarded PEP. What's happening right now is they're close to the capacity. They're not at capacity. I want to make that clear. They are still processing some things, so they haven't officially awarded all the slots. However, they have received more than enough applications to fill all the slots. So they are now waitlisting people. They are still weeding through applications. So if you're in the situation where you were somebody who applied way early on and got skipped, they are still going manually through those. They have not yet officially hit the cap because they reserved. If you look at the email they sent out for the wait list, it says something like, to avoid exceeding the scholarship slots. As we near the cap, we have implemented a wait list. So they are working to make sure that the people who applied early and the people who had kids who some of their kids were switched and some weren't, they're trying to make sure that all those people who should have been switched previously and somehow got stuck in a glitch get switched over. And then if there are still spots on the wait list, they'll start moving people from the wait list. Also, if people move from PEP to UA because now UA has opened up, then they may move more people from the PEP waitlist and award them PEP. So
True.
it's still in process. That's the answer to that. But if you got waitlisted, that's why.
Tracy says, "Thank you, Crystal. That makes so much sense. But as you know, people with high emotions, so we get it."
Yes.
Katie Martin says, "My question was skipped over. Was this on purpose or by mistake? Let me assure you, it was not on purpose. I did see your question and wanted to get to it, but then many comments came in and I lost it. So it was by mistake. Do we have any information?" Is her question. Do we have any information about reimbursement and U.S. bank deposit timeframes?
I think I just answered that by accident because I
I think
was
so.
answering Tracy's question. So that's pretty much all the information that I have is what I explained in answer to Tracy's question.
Got you.
The
Then
time frames for the actual funds to hit the card seem to be very uncertain right now because it's not just a step up issue. It's also they send it to US Bank and then US Bank processes on their side. So that's something we have been talking with the PEP director about, but I don't have any exact time frames other than what I just explained.
got you. All right. This person, man, is making it really awkward to say your name. This is usernames. This person asks, "I was wondering if down the road there will be more oversight about the prices of things. I am noticing rather huge markups on instruments. Can I just say I was looking at those this past week and I was like, what the crap?
Guitars, yeah.
Why in the world is that guitar $1,500? That is literally like insane markup, like crazy." Anyway, okay, I'll put that aside. I was playing guitar. My daughter was like, "I want to learn how," and we were like, "Well, let's see what we can find for you." Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Anyway, it seems like companies in the scholarship shop are marking up items significantly, making the scholarship monies, although such a blessing, less impactful because we are having to settle for overpriced items, similar to price gouging. Yeah.
Right. So
Do you see more oversight in the future as they work out the kinks?
Can I address this?
Yeah.
So, I am a PEP parent and I have students and I have my scholarship access. So I have browsed lots of things in my scholarship. It is not an across the board rate hike. In fact, some of the companies,
True.
the items are actually less expensive. They seem to have cut some kind of a deal. Specifically, Lakeshore Learning, everything is consistently $1 or $2 less in my scholarship than it is on the Lakeshore Learning website. Rainbow Resources, everything is the exact same price. And then the vendors that I've checked, there are some that seem to be more expensive. I think it's the vendor doing that. It's not Step Up doing that. I know you're asking if there'll be more oversight, so you weren't necessarily insinuating that it was Step Up doing that. I think it just depends on the vendor. And honestly, you can request for vendors to be added, and vendors
We're gonna do that
to be added. So if some of
I'm
these
gonna go
vendors,
to every guitar shop on the strip.
Well, what I was going to say is some of the guitars, when I went to the vendor's website, it was just as overpriced on their website as it was in my scholarship.
True, actually.
So that
depending on the quality of the guitar, you can buy real guitars or you can buy.
Well, I know guitars. These were. You're right.
This was just a ritzy guitar shop, I think. But because they are the primary guitar vendor that I was finding in my scholarship, even when I went to their website, the guitars were overpriced on their website. So the answer to that, in my mind, is more options in my scholar shop. Like if
Yeah.
you find a guitar vendor that you're like, these are reasonably priced and I'd love to see these in my scholar shop, see if you can get the vendor added. They have, Step Up has on their website a form you can fill out to request individual items to be added and to request like a vendor store to be added. You can also contact the vendor and see if they're willing to apply from their end to apply with Step Up as a vendor in my scholar shop. Not every store is going to want to go through the process to do that, but
Yeah.
the more options that we can get added into my scholar shop, the more options you're going to have. Like you won't have one guitar shop cornering the market and able to charge whatever they want.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I think. Wait, we have some more.
Is that parent can purchase the guitar through their private funds and then ask for reimbursement.
Yeah, that is another option. If you find a reasonably priced guitar, guitars are a covered item in the purchasing guide. So if you would prefer to pay out of pocket and save the money in the long term, you have to wait for the reimbursement, but it's going to be less coming out of your funds once that all gets processed if you purchase it yourself. However, I know not everybody can afford to buy a guitar out of pocket. So then the other solution is to see if we can get more vendors added to the scholar shop.
Misty says, do we have any info on PEP reimbursement review or audit process so that we can be sure to include all that is required initially, specifically for providers? For example, PEP instructors and programs. One of the call center reps noted that they need to have a LinkedIn account if they don't have a degree or certification in their field.
Okay, that's a whole mashup of things together. Okay, so
yeah, because are you
yeah,
program
so
or tutor? How's that classified? Goes back to our original conversation.
Yeah, so if you join late, you may want to go once the call completes and the video posts, you may want to go rewatch because we talked a little bit about at the beginning navigating the purchasing guide. What you submit with your reimbursement needs to match whatever is required for that category in the purchasing guide. If you submit exactly what that particular category in the guide says to submit, you should be good unless you just get a processor who hasn't been fully trained yet. To answer the PEP providers, that could mean anything. So literally anything in the purchasing guide that is a qualified category could be a provider for PEP. That could include part-time tutoring, virtual programs, home education instructional programs. So again, what you need to submit is going to depend on what category that actually falls under. The LinkedIn requirement was added as a part-time tutoring. That's specifically for tutoring. So one of the requirements for electives, it's specifically for electives. If you're getting like guitar lessons or a tutor in an elective category, they added a thing that 3 years of experience can stand in for a teaching certificate for an elective instructor.
So that'd be why they're
requesting the. Then people were like, well, but what if I'm doing, how do I get that from my instructor? And one of the things that they added was, well, you can send us a link to their LinkedIn account. And if we can verify that they have been instructing guitar, art, whatever, for 3 years, then that's 3 years of experience. So that's but again, that applies to a very specific category in the purchasing guide. That isn't going to be what's required for every category.
Right. Sure, certainly.
So the
good question.
Kind of the Bible to these programs.
Yes. So you want to check the purchasing guide to see what you need to submit because there's not a standard like for every reimbursement. This is what you submit. It's going to depend on what category you're submitting under.
Well, Brenda, we weren't sure exactly where the conversation was going to go today, whether it would be 5 or 10 minutes, and we're over an hour. So I'm going to call us to an end. We had for a while about 30 people participating and being here. I think we have ran their attention span dry. So we're going to go ahead and call it a date. Someone did say that we are planning the 3rd Hispanic Homeschooling Conference in Florida for 2024, and we would love to have your booth there. So on Anna, email us directly with some of that information so that we can connect with you about being there, and we would be happy to take a look at what we can do there. Anything else you guys want to say before we go? I think Delene said something, and I have it's buried here, and I can't find it. Um, Bless her heart. I've lost so many comments. The conversation was great today, but it was hard to track the different branches of it for me. So, anywho, thank you, Brenda, for being here, even though I know you barely got any sleep. Crystal, thank you for all of the hard work and
Amen.
information that you throw out here. You're such a valuable resource. Brenda, I appreciate you showing off and flexing your ability to quote statutes. You're like a super. It's like a superpower, and I love it when you do that. So, without further ado, I think that brings us to a close. So, toward the end here, I always like to say thank you again to our sponsors. One of our top sponsors, FPEA. Tracy, thank you for being with us again today. I appreciate seeing you here. And also, if you didn't get a chance to check out our recognition wall, go see who else is supporting us monthly. And if you would consider becoming one of those people, we are solely funded based off of these donations. And if you haven't become a person to support us yet, we ask that you please do. We are making moves in the background to move our whole family up to Tallahassee and work alongside Brenda and carry the torch. There's a lot that's going into that we need. So if you haven't decided to become a sponsor yet, please consider doing so. We would love to keep doing this for everyone so that there's this kind of support here, and also the lobbying that we talk about only sometimes because PEP is so wildly a hot topic right now. But thank you all for being here with us today, and we are going to call the stream to an end.